Dr. Harris, I think the Black Church is one of the most important communities to heal and change and transform this country because of all that have been through and the ability to engage and to deal with death and survive and move on. So what are the things that you'd say that the Black Church and the Black community can offer to this country and to the world?
Well, the Black Church is a space of hope, always. It's a deep space of healing, always. And it is a space of agency, in that the Black Church has often been the one piece of property, the one space that has been owned by Black people.
Yes.
It has also been a space of politics and major political action, of justice work. So in Black theology and in most Black churches, there is a connection between fighting for the freedom of the liberation of the mind and the spirit, and a connection to fighting for the freedom of the body, the Black body. And so the Black Church has served historically as one of the most important sacred spaces and healing places for Black peoples. You may know, I will share with you, that the Black Church actually began by slaves gathering together in secret meetings called Hush Harbor movements.
What was that?
During slavery, it was actually considered illegal for Black people to, in many places, for Black people to gather themselves to have any kind of religious meeting or any kind of meeting. The fear was by slave owners and through the process of slave owning, that if Black people gathered together, they would revolt. And they did revolt. And many of those revolts started with the seed of liberation in the Black Church. It really was a kind of a deep awareness and a reframing of the Christian story, of the Exodus story, that comes out of the Old Testament, that Black peoples began to see themselves in those Christian narratives. However, they did not take in all of the Christian scripture as it was being preached to them by white preachers, oftentimes hook and sinker. They did not accept the fullness of the scriptures as it was being told to them, but they changed Christianity. They changed Christianity so that it would fit their story, so that they could see the liberation and the hope and the empowerment in the Christianity. So the Christian tradition became anew, and one of the bases for that space of religiosity and religious practice and freedom was the space of the Black Church.
And in your upbringing, what was the importance of the Black Church to you? And tell us a little bit about how did you get here, where you are?
I was raised in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and that is the church in which I am ordained today as an itinerant elder. I was raised by a father who was a deep Christian mystic. And so he attended church and listened to the preacher and honored all the beautiful rituals, but always led us into theological inquiry and conversation after church. I was also raised with a wonderful mother who is now also ordained as an African Methodist Episcopal itinerant, or she's actually not itinerant, she's local elder. But her journey actually deeply influenced mine, as she was a Sunday school superintendent as I was growing up. She was deeply, deeply involved in the church. And my journey was also deeply framed by my brother, Barry Harris Jr., who is deeply connected as a younger brother. He and I went through the journey of being children of these beloved parents together in the church. So I think that my upbringing as a child in the church allowed me to know the songs of the church, allowed me to know the prayers of the church, and I think really did form a beautiful love connection and love womb-like space for me as I was growing up as a young girl. And the creation of that kind of racial empowerment, the political empowerment, that was a part of my young church identity as I was a girl. That became very central for me in terms of becoming a womanist theological ethicist later in life.
And what made you go to the academy and pursue your PhD?
Yes. There are two beautiful stories. I will tell you the one that is best to tell for this. I was encouraged by Dr. Vincent Harding, who is a powerful historian and an amazing writer, wrote with and marched with Martin Luther King Jr. I was encouraged by him to consider doctoral education. However, it was not just his voice who really encouraged me. It was also the voice of a powerful theologian by the name of Sheila Devaney, a powerful feminist theologian who was then teaching at Isler School of Theology. And through her mentoring and through Dr. Harding's encouragement and mentoring, I learned how to write. I was actually a news writer and worked in broadcast journalism as I was moving through my seminary education. And really, I thought I would become a news producer. That was my trajectory. It was the covering of the Columbine High School shooting that shifted my direction and helped me to recognize the importance of ethics, not only for media, but also for communities and how communities heal from violence. So that began my journey towards New York City, towards Union Theological Seminary, where I was admitted as a doctoral student of Emily Towns. And that was a very exciting time for me. It was just about a week before September 11th in 2001 that I arrived in New York City. And after September 11th, the whole world changed.
Right, that was our first day of class.
That's right. That's right. Yes, our class is still many good memories because we became so close early because of that event.
We did. And how do you see your role today as a pastor, as a thinker, somebody who is working in the academy? What do you see yourself today doing?
I am very much an activist scholar. Which means I have one foot in the world of activism, spiritual activism, which is connected to the work that I do with the church. I work primarily with the church right now in Texas, and we work on the eradication of mass incarceration and bringing people's awareness and churches' awareness up so that people can know how to welcome our own back home, but then also how we can interrupt the system. There is so many lives that are deeply impacted and negatively impacted by the prison system. And across this country, there are millions and millions and millions of African American men and women who are imprisoned unjustly. And so interrupting those kinds of systems of injustice is some of the activist work that I do, even as a spiritual guide and leader. I also preach still in different spaces and in different communities. I serve as a spiritual director as well, which is a beautiful tradition of being able to deeply listen and hear. It's in the family of counseling and pastoral counseling, but to help people hear the Spirit as the Spirit is calling them to new callings, to new seasons, and new ways of being in life.
And what are you working on in terms of academy? Is there any book that you're working on a project?
Well, I work on a number of projects for the Academy. I'm deeply invested in the Academy. I serve on the board of the American Academy of Religion and also the board of the Society of Christian Ethics. I also serve on the board of the public television station in Dallas, KRA, television and radio. And I consider all of these very, very important places to be and important justice work to do, as marginalized voices, even in the academy, have to still continue to fight to be heard. So a lot of the board work that I do is about creating new spaces in the guild for conversations to take place and movements to take place and programs to be developed so that scholars of color, from the first time that they come out of their graduate school experience through tenure and beyond tenure, that they have opportunities to learn, to continue their professional development, and to have beautiful careers, beautiful, successful lives. As a scholar, I continue to do the work of writing in eco-womanism and bringing the voices of African and African American women's into the environmental justice movement, making people aware of the many contributions that these women have made to thinking about ecological justice. I also do a lot of work now in interfaith writings, and this is in part because of the trip that you took me on, that we went on to Brazil.
That's right.
But the gifts of African diasporic religious traditions are so varied and so important, and it kind of necessitates a kind of awareness of beyond Christianity, that we be in conversation with religious traditions such as Yoruba and Condomblé, and even some mainstream religious traditions such as Buddhism. So a lot of the work that I do right now is conversation around womanist and Buddhist perspectives. What does it mean to think about compassion and justice? Compassion in the way that it comes out of a Buddhist tradition, and then justice as a way that it comes out of a womanist tradition, and sometimes a womanist Christian tradition.
That's wonderful. You have your plate full.
Very.
Yeah. So what would you say if a woman wants to study theology, and if a black woman wants to study theology, what would you tell her?
I think the first thing I would tell a woman who wants to study theology is to recognize the divine is in you. That God is already in you. And to care for and to love fiercely God within her. That becomes very, very important for black women to acknowledge that the God that they worship, the God that they know and want to know, there is already deep wisdom inside of their own lives and their own beings. That yes, indeed, one can experience the holy in church, and one can experience the holy in seminary, and one can experience the holy in politics, and etc. But to remember that the wisdom of God rests deeply in you as you are now. And to invite new conversation partners to become a part of different classrooms is to only be able to open spaces within oneself to allow that wisdom to connect with grander wisdom outside of her.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And so to finish the interview, Dr. Harris, what books were kind of epiphany books for you, or events or people that you want to share?
Wow. I think probably the most eye-opening book for me is still Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. That is one of the sacred texts of my whole life. The Color Purple by Alice Walker is another text that has deeply shaped my being and my work and my study. Bell Hooks has an extraordinary book called Sisters of the Yam. It's about black women and self-recovery, and it goes into the depths of how important it is for black women to continue to stay committed to their own self-healing and their community's healing, even as we are looking towards environmental justice and other justice issues. I think those three books are very important to me. I must say that I am still one who reads the Bible almost daily.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And then this tone, I believe I read the Bible through a poetic lens and with poetic license. So to create a kind of gender inclusivity, I actually take my pen to the Bible, to the biblical page, and I scratch out the he and I put in the she.
Fantastic.
Or I create a dash so that both can be present. But the Bible reading for me is a conversation with God. It is not swallowing doctrine or theology, but it is creating theology together.
That's fantastic. Dr. Harris, I'm so honored and happy. Thank you so much for this time and for the ways in which you bless us all.
Thank you,
Thank
Claudio.
you.
It's an honor. Thank you.
You.